Before I get to my review of this week's episode of Big Little Lies, I unfortunately have to talk about something that I really don't like having to talk about. As we know, there has been a lot of suspicions going on with Andrea Arnold. She has not been any press junkets for this season. It's when they did season one, they would have those, sort of like discussion things with Jean-Marc Vallée, where he talked about what he was trying to do in the show. There hasn't been anything like that with Andrea Arnold. So it's a little bit weird that, she is supposed to be like the main showrunner of the season, even though David E. Kelley is still the creator. She's the director of this entire season. The fact that she hasn't said anything, it was a bit weird, but now it unfortunately makes a lot of sense. And the results is not what I was hoping. Apparently, here's what ended up happening is they got Andrea Arnold, they saw her work on American Honey and things like that, and they said, we want you to completely take over this show. We want Andrea Arnold's season. We want your style to loom over the entire thing. We're not going to interfere with it at all, and, you're going to get the full credit and things like that. Well, unfortunately, that's not what happened. For whatever reason, there was some sort of miscommunication. HBO was so worried, and I would assume that what happened is that HBO was worried that the second season was going to fall flat, that it wasn't going to feel as dynamic as the first, so they did everything in their power to make it exactly like the first. They actually got Jean-Marc Vallée back. He pretty much took over the entire thing, and that is why Andrea Arnold basically had no voice whatsoever. Whatever representation or whatever vision they said she was going to have, she sadly did not. And as someone who loves getting to see directors really just, have their whole vision intact and have that on display and not let anything get in the way of that and not let anyone deviate from their vision. This is very sad to see. I understand David E. Kelley and all of them. They wanted this to be a really great season, but come on, you hired this girl. You told her that she could have made something really, you told her that you can do something and make it your own, and then you don't let her do that? I mean, it feels very shameless to me, and it's definitely not something I would expect HBO to do. This is supposed to be the network of creative freedom, and this is definitely not that. This is the complete opposite of that, and that very much has soured some of my opinion on the season, but it also makes a lot of sense because Andrea Arnold has just not felt like she's had much of a voice this season. I haven't really felt that much different stylistically, and I thought it was because Andrea Arnold just loved the show so much that she wanted to, keep it so it felt familiar, but unfortunately that was not the case, and that's very sad to see. So, yeah, again, I don't like having to talk about these things, but it definitely clears up quite a few things now. It makes sense why this season just has not had that style that we've wanted it to and things like that. And look, the other thing I would say is if they were so concerned about, getting in, making it like the first season, why even get rid of Jean-Marc Vallée in the first place? I mean, he was done with Sharp Objects. As far as I know, he wasn't working on anything else. Why couldn't they have just gotten him? I understand he did not want this to exist, but if they were so concerned, they could have easily been like, hey, we really need you. We love your work on the first season. We need you to come back, and hopefully they could have gotten him back. So I don't understand why they couldn't have just gotten him back for this season. It just doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. But either way, it's very upsetting what happened. I really do feel bad for Arnold here. It doesn't change my thoughts on the season. I try to not let that stuff get in the way, but now my thoughts on this season, it doesn't feel like it has as much of a voice. It feels very studio-driven in that way, and or network-driven, and that's not something I like in my movies and TV shows, and that's unfortunately what ended up happening here. So again, with that out of the way, I just had to talk about that because I knew you guys were going to message me about it, and what my thoughts on the situation were. It sucks. I hate that it happened. I can't believe that HBO, of all networks, is responsible for something like this, but either way, it happened. There's really nothing we can do about it. You heard my thoughts on it. Now, let's get to the review.
Don't change the channel. Don't touch that dial. We got it all on UHF. Take off your sneakers.
Hey guys, it's Camera Review for this week's episode of Big Little Lies, Season 2, Episode 5, Kill Me, and I was looking forward to this episode, but coming off the heels of last week, I was a little bit worried. This was really the first episode of Big Little Lies I went into a little bit skeptical, because just knowing all the stuff we got with Bonnie's mom, I was hoping that they weren't going to take a really weird turn that sort of jumped the shark, and thankfully, it seems like that's not where they're going. This was a much better episode, and probably one of my favorites of the entire season. I think we had some really great character work here. We expanded on some things that I've wanted them to expand on for a while now, and I'm really glad that we did, and I'm really liking where this season is wrapping up for sure, but we're just going to get into it. So, of course, the main stuff going on in this episode, as is every episode, is the stuff between Celeste and Mary Louise. These two are really duking it out at this point, but I feel like, once again, the show is doing a good job with not making Mary Louise this one-dimensional character. You can understand where she is coming from. Everyone's kind of wondered throughout the season, does she care about Celeste and things like that? I feel like this episode confirms she does care about Celeste. In fact, she thinks Celeste is a good person. She just does not think that she is in stable condition right now. And, again, I feel like to a degree she's not wrong here. I mean, we're seeing even throughout this episode, Celeste is getting more and more manic, and you can see this is really starting to have an effect on her. So when Mary Louise talks about how she is a good mother, and she thinks she's a good person, but she just thinks she's a bit unhinged at the moment, I'm kind of with her. I can see where she's coming from. Like, no, obviously I don't want Celeste's kids to be taken away, but I get what Mary Louise is saying, in that Celeste is just not well mentally, and we've seen that throughout this entire season. I mean, she's been very back and forth when it comes to Perry and things like that, so I think that's a completely valid criticism, but you can see that this is really having an impact on Celeste. She wants this to get done right now. Like, she doesn't want any sort of fight here. She wants, and her lawyer, I think, is interesting, because her lawyer is kind of impartial to this whole thing. Like, she's very much just like a wait-and-see kind of thing. Like, Celeste wants her lawyer to be more involved, but her lawyer's trying to be impartial, which, I mean, lawyers should be, but they also shouldn't be. That's more something a judge should do, but it seems like this lawyer, she doesn't really want to do any, like, rehearsing. She's just kind of going to represent her in the moment, and I feel like that's already kind of doomed to fail. But we'll have to see where that's really going to go. The stuff that's really great is how Celeste gets Max and Josh involved. They become very aware of this situation. And you can see that Celeste is not sure how this is really going to play out. You can see that she's a little bit worried that this isn't going to work out very well with Mary Louise, but she's doing what she can to try to make sure this goes in her favor. Going as far as to reel Max and Josh in on what exactly is going on here. Let them know that, hey, you know, Mary Louise is trying to take you away, and Max and Josh say specifically that, no, they want to live with her. They don't want to be with Mary Louise and things like that. The problem is, though, is that I do think that what Dennis O'Hare said here is correct. This is a lose-lose situation for the kids. They're either losing Celeste or they're losing Mary Louise. There is no joint custody. Celeste is not interested in joint custody. That's an option that she's presented with, but she's not interested in that. And again, I feel like if Celeste was not nearly as unhinged right now, I do think she might be interested in the idea of joint custody. But because of the fact that she's not in a good place right now, obviously this is really starting to affect her. And you know, she goes as far as to tell, but she does tell Max and Josh that, look, you need to be, you know, you need to be honest. I don't want you to just take my side. I don't want you to just take Mary Louise's side. Be honest on what you want to do. And I like that she said that. It shows that even though she is unhinged, she is still trying to be a good mother. She is still looking for their best interests. And I think definitely that's something we do see here. However, on the other side of things, we have this other situation going on when it comes to the whole situation with Ziggy. On the other hand, though, you do have the way she handles the situation with Max and Josh, which this was something I really like seeing. You know, the kids this season, they have not played nearly as big as a role as they did in Season 1. This episode, that kind of changes a bit. This is probably the most screen time we've gotten from Max, Josh, and Ziggy in a while. There's this situation that they're presented with this kid. He is bullying them. He goes as far as to say that, you know, your mom was raped and things like that. And I heard a lot of people say that this feels like a bit of a reach, like how would the kids know about this? But I mean, remember, kids these days, Ziggy, Max, and Josh's age, they have cell phones, they have technology, like they have it at their fingertips, so I don't think it's really that surprising if they actually know what this stuff is, even though, yes, they are at a very young age. We're in a period where, I mean, technology is constantly evolving, and especially for little kids, they're being exposed to things that they weren't exposed to before. You can't really shelter them from anything anymore, and I think this is a very good example of that, and the way Celeste reacts to the situation is a bit concerning, and honestly, it does sort of feed into Mary Louise thinks she's a bit unhinged, because she straight up tells Max and Josh that violence is not the answer, and things like that. And then she proceeds to, you know, they call her a bitch and she slaps them. So yeah, it is a little bit concerning the way she is acting here. And honestly, the way Max and Josh handle the situation, yes, they have been acting out a lot. They have been doing things that are, you know, sort of, you know, bad signs of what their father was like. But this, on the other hand, was more of them sticking up for Ziggy. I mean, this kid straight up said that, like, Jane was raped and things like that and was doing whatever he can to provoke a fight, and you know, they just started wailing on him. Yes, they did do some damage, but it was very much just them sticking up for him, and I think they are doing a good job of kind of subtly showing, like, how much you know, how close these three have really gone, and I definitely did like seeing that, but the way Celeste reacts contrasted with the way that Jane reacts, where Jane has a much more laid-back attitude. She's kind of, like, fine about it. She goes as far as to, even though they are suspended, she kind of gives them, like, a day of fun. It definitely shows that Celeste is starting to be affected by this, and I think this is definitely going to, if this case does not go in the way she wants it to go, I do see things getting a little bit, you know, I do see her going down a really dark path, and we're definitely seeing that here. They also did do a good job, though, of kind of explaining why she can't represent herself. Essentially, it's because she would not be impartial, she would, in fact, be biased, and because of that, she needs her, you know, her own representation. She can't just represent herself, and I think that makes sense, you know, because of the fact that she could just easily, I think they gave a good reason for it. I also think she's just a bit unhinged. She wouldn't really make an informed decision. She wouldn't really present a case that wasn't biased. So I think that is a good reasoning for sure, and I think that definitely makes a little more sense. But like I said, things with Celeste, they're just getting worse and worse by the minute, and I'm hoping that things work out for her with this case, but we'll just have to see how it turns out overall. But the other big thing in this episode, which I am so happy finally got a little bit more meat, is the stuff between Ed and Madeline. For the past 3 episodes, things have been quite contentious between them, but finally in this episode, it becomes more than just Madeline going to Ed, trying to make up for it, and him being standoffish. We finally get a lot more in-depth into what's really going on here, and I have to say, as much as I have not liked this storyline, you guys know Season 1, it was my least favorite storyline, I actually am now liking that it exists because it's given a lot more room to really showcase Adam Scott's capability as an actor. He is just been fantastic this entire season, and probably his best performances in this episode, because, you know, things start off, Madeline is dropping major signs to Ed that she, you know, feels bad and things like that. She's singing that song in the car. You can tell he's getting very aggravated, but finally he lets it all out, and he tells her that when they met, you know, the night they met, it felt like an audition, not an audition, you know, their first date. It didn't feel like an audition to be her husband, but to be a father. And, you know, he felt that she was making good judgment and things like that. But then she goes with Joseph, and it's completely changed the way that he feels about her, and now he's stuck with a woman that he doesn't trust, but at the same time, he still does love her. He has always loved her. He still does love her. He just can't trust her in the way that he thought he could, and you can see that he is visibly hurt by this, and I thought this scene was so great. It finally gave us what I wanted here. I didn't just want the same repetitive stuff. Now you can see what Ed is really going through. And what Madeline says to him, I genuinely do believe when Madeline says, like, I can't promise you I won't fuck up again, but I'm not going to do anything like this ever again. I believe her. I don't think she's going to do anything like this again. I think Madeline is completely serious in saying that, but she also can't ignore the damage that has already been done. You know, there's already been a lot of stuff that has been going on there, and the relationship is fractured, but I feel like Ed is trying to do what he can, you know, she's trying to do what she can to repair it, while Ed is someone who is just a bit on the fence. While he wants to repair it, he's not sure if she's, you know, he can trust her, which makes sense because of what she did, and even though I think she is sincere with what she's saying, it might just be a little too late, and I thought that scene was so great, the way that Madeline is owning up to her actions, like, Reisman told her to. I really do like seeing, but I also like how Ed is just not just going to let this go. He's not just going to forget about it. It's not going to be that easy. And that scene with Chloe, honestly really honestly almost got me into tears a little bit. Like when Chloe's hugging him and you realize that, you know, Chloe is his daughter. Like, sure, Abby is his adopted daughter, but Chloe is his daughter for sure, and he has this bond with her, and he doesn't want it to, you know, nothing has been ruined there. Like, Abby, sure, things are a little bit, there's not necessarily tension, but Abby's the person that he found out from. Nothing really, I mean, Chloe's completely innocent in all of this, and that's what's so sad about this entire thing, and I think that was definitely a very, very heartbreaking scene for sure. But then comes that ending with Tori, which, I mean, this is not something that I was expecting. I should have been, though, because we had that scene with her in the beginning of the season, and we haven't really seen anything since, but it looks like she is seducing Ed, and then you see also in that bar is Joseph. So what I'm assuming she's doing is she's basically kind of giving him a taste of his own medicine, like, if you're going to cheat on me, then I'm going to do the same with Madeline's husband. I don't think Ed is going to give in, though. I think even though he is very damaged and he's clearly very hurt by this situation, I don't think he's going to cheat on Madeline. It would be very out of character if he would. I think Tori is going to seduce him, but I do not see him cheating on Madeline. But I am excited to see where this goes. Just this idea, it's not what I was expecting, and considering that Ed clearly was, you know, into her, like, he's shown interest in, he noticed when she got, like, the boob job and things like that, clearly he does have interest in her. Again, I don't think that he is going to end up committing that infidelity. It wouldn't make sense, and I don't think that's where they're going. But we'll have to see, but I definitely did like where this is headed. It's interesting stuff for sure, and it's not at all where I was expecting this story to go. But of course, the stuff you really want me to talk about in this episode is everything involving Jane and Corey, which, this was insane. I mean, look, we've gotten to a point in the show where, I thought I knew how this was going to play out. I thought for sure that Corey was a good guy, and up to this point, we thought he was. I mean, we have this great scene where the two of them are together, and they're getting intimate, and you think that Jane is finally ready to take that next step. You think she's about to have sex with him, but she can't do it. She pulls back, she starts crying, and the way that Corey handles this, I mean, he's so gentle, and he is very understanding about it. Like, he gets the trauma that she is going through because she opened up to him in the last episode, and you really do feel for Jane. She wants to be with Corey intimately, both emotionally and sexually, but unfortunately, because of the abuse that Perry has put upon her, it's becoming hard to do that. And I love the conversation she has with Celeste, where she asks her, if Perry ever, obviously she talks about Perry and things like that, and what he did with Celeste, and how she didn't try to ever get out of it, and Celeste simply says it's because she's fucked up. So she knows that there was a level to their relationship that was very unhealthy, but she still did it, whereas Jane, she can't seem to get over this trauma, and that's something I think they've done an excellent job with this season, showing how Jane, even though she's in a good place, mentally, it's never going to be completely gone. It's always going to be in her head, and you can see how that's really starting to affect her. And I like the scene where you see Corey and Max, Josh, and Ziggy. All of them seem to be liking him. He seems to be getting along well with them. And I think they do a really good job making you think, okay, Corey's this great guy. But then we get the end of the episode where Renata, she's going to the police station, you know, with the whole Gordon situation and things like that. And she sees Corey. And Corey is leaving the police station, and look, this could mean a few things. I'm not going to say that it outright means that Corey's a mole, but I feel like there is definitely something that he has not been completely honest with her about. And honestly, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you remember, the first thing he asked Jane was, aren't you one of the Monterey Five? Now, how would he realistically know this? He wasn't friends with any of them. He had to have been someone who was either hired by Mary Louise or he's been a mole by the FBI, because Quinlan has been suspicious of them and she sent him out there. I mean, I think there's more going on than we suspect, and I'm interested in seeing what's really going on there. I actually think this is a really interesting idea. I think there's a lot you can really do with this, and I want to see where they take this for sure. I'm not going to make any assumptions, but I think the show has done an excellent job with misleading us. It made us think that Corey was genuine, that he really did care for Jane. And I do think he still cares for Jane. I don't think that is false at all. I think regardless of if he was a mole or not, I think at this very moment, he cares for Jane. He has that care for her. He has grown to really love her, and maybe not love, but he has grown to really care about her, and I think that part is definitely true. But what we don't know is what he's done with her genuine? Was he, you know, is he a mole? Was he someone who was like an informant for the FBI and things like that? I mean, there's a lot of possibilities here, and I'm excited to see where they end up going with this for sure. So I think this was a really interesting twist. At first, I didn't really love it, but the more I thought about it, the more I thought of all the possibilities for where this can really go, and I really did like seeing it for sure. So yeah, really great stuff there. I love what's going on with Jane, but I also really do love this reveal. It does a great job of really revving up the momentum, because yeah, this season has not had that through line that season 1 did with the murder. So this kind of gets you to want to tune in more. For those who think the season's boring, which I personally don't think the season's been boring. I really don't. I feel like there's been some great character work all season. But this does a good job in, if you were bored, this gets you to, you know, get interested again. I think they did a good job with that here. And as far as Renata goes, she really does not have a lot going on in this episode, besides her conversation she has with Mary Louise, where she's trying to drill questions out of her, but Mary Louise is just not budging. There really is not a lot going on. There is a great scene, though, with Renata, where she is upset about, you know, her being cut out of that magazine, which I thought that was actually a really great sort of running joke they've had, where she was overjoyed about it in episode 2, and now she's realizing she's not going to be there. It's sad, but they're playing it up for comedy, and Laura Dern's so great at that, and I think they're doing a good job with that for sure. That being said, I do hope in these next 2 episodes we get a little bit more emotionally going on with that, because, I mean, she still is losing everything. She's no longer going to be rich, and it's a very tragic situation. I'm interested in seeing how that all turns out. She decides to spend the day with Amabella. You know, she knows that Jane and Celeste, their kids can't go to school, so she decides she's going to do the same with Amabella, and so they kind of go out, and that's kind of all we get with Renata. There's not really a lot going on with her in this episode. Really, the only other thing to talk about is with Bonnie, who I thought was much improved in this episode. The stuff going on with her this week was a lot better. The interactions between Bonnie and her mom, especially, I thought worked a lot more, because now we're really seeing what those superstitions are all about. We kind of get the sense here that Bonnie's mom was very abusive. She has had really bad alcohol issues, and this has really affected Bonnie. And I actually like this, because it's a change from the book. Originally in the book, her father was the one who was abusive, but it really seems like they're honing in on her mother being the abusive one. And her father, on the other hand, he wasn't, you know, he wasn't abusive, but he didn't really do much. He knew what was going on, but he just wasn't really doing all that much. He was kind of scared of Elizabeth, and you definitely do get to see that here. There's that great scene that Bonnie has with him where she talks about how he didn't do anything and that he was none the wiser, and you can see the regret that he has. I think he really wishes that he could have done something, but unfortunately, that's in the past. There's not much he can really do there. Bonnie's mom, in the meantime, she's been having these visions for a long time now, and Bonnie hasn't been able to tell which is real and which is not. And this is way more interesting than what we got last week. And now I am okay with these superstitious things sort of going on, because now they've made it seem like it's less of the show's going in this like fantasy direction, which I was worried about, and more that Bonnie's mom has these visions, and they probably are the way they are because of her alcoholism. That probably doesn't help, but she's probably scared Bonnie all her life. That's probably what that one scene with them going underwater was all about, and these premonitions that she gets, we don't know if they're entirely real or not, and I think that's a very interesting idea. I still need to see where they take that. I'm not 100% sold on this story yet. I do think it's a bit underwritten. I wish we would have gotten a little bit more with this throughout the season, because Bonnie as a character, while I do think she's been better, she has felt even still underwritten. It felt like they still could have done more with her, and I feel like there definitely could have been a little bit more going on, but we still have 2 episodes. There's still room to play with that for sure, but the way the episode ends is a very sad note, because Bonnie's mom essentially says, "Kill me," which I'm assuming is just to pull her plug and just end it all, but we'll have to see the way things really do play out there. Technical-wise, there's a lot of great stuff going on, as always. The directing, even though I said Andrea Arnold in the beginning of this video was not very involved with this season, the directing has still been really great. I think that stuff is still really good. The cinematography, I mean, that last montage at the end was so great. I love the way that was done, especially the scene with Tori, and then you slowly see Joseph, in the shadows was so great. I love the way that was filmed. And then the thing with Corey at the end, really great stuff. I think the cinematography was definitely really great here for sure. It very much stuck out. The score, I mean, always in Big Little Lies, it plays a great role, but I really did love the score here for sure. And there actually were some really funny moments in this episode, not just the stuff of Renata, but one of the funniest had to be with Nathan, where he gets all mad at Ed because Ed's trying to apologize, and then Nathan calls him out whenever they talk. It's either they fight or they are apologizing to each other, and, Nathan calls him like a fuck up or whatever, and then he calls someone else in the street a fuck up and like apologizes to them. It was so awkward, but I thought it was really funny the way it was done, and stuff like that's the kind of Nathan Ed stuff I want to see. I don't want to see them fighting or like physically fighting. I want to see more of the banter there, and I think that's more of what I want to see, and I think that was definitely a lot of fun for sure. In terms of flaws with this episode, I will say I think there were some things that they could have done a little bit more with. Like I said, I know it's not about the kids, but I would have liked to see a little bit more of just Max, Josh, and Ziggy hanging out, even though we can see they are enjoying themselves. I wish we got to see a little bit more of that. I like that we're finally giving the kids a little bit more of a focus, because they have been relatively more in the background this season, and I do like the way that is coming to fruition here. But I would have wanted to see a little bit more there. And also Bonnie stuff, as much as I care about it, I still am a little fearful where it's going. We'll have to see the way that all turns out for sure. And also, as much as I like this twist with Tori and Joseph, I don't know if I like the direction that Ed is going to cheat on Madeline. I don't think they're going in that direction. I hope they're not, because it just would seem out of character for Ed. I hope that's not where we're going, because it just... I don't see Ed getting there. Again, he loves Madeline. Madeline just apologized to him. Again, yes, he doesn't trust her right now, but I do not see that happening. I see him backing off. I see Tori flirting with him and then him backing off, but I'm interested in seeing where that's really going to go. I'm wondering how that's all going to play out and things like that. Overall, I thought this was a really strong episode, though. This was definitely one of my favorites of the season. It did a really nice job of revving up the tension. It did a good job of upping the momentum for sure. The Corey twist is very interesting. There's a lot of places they can take that for sure. I really love what they're doing with Jane right now for sure. All the stuff with Madeline and Ed is stuff I wanted. That's the thing I love about this episode. It gave me stuff that I've wanted to see throughout the entire season, especially when it comes to Ed and Madeline, their whole conflict. I think they're really starting to flesh it out more, which I like seeing. I loved all the stuff we got with Celeste this week as well, her whole ongoing battle. I mean, it's It's really sad to see. You can see how this is really starting to destroy her, and I hope this case goes in her favor. I'm kind of starting to worry that it's not, but we'll have to see the way that really does turn out. Of course, the stuff between her and Mary Louise is great as ever, and in general, I like the way the kids were involved in this episode. This was just everything that I could want in a Big Little Lies episode. Like, when I think of a great Big Little Lies episode, this is really what comes to mind, and I think they did a really great job with it for sure. It's definitely one of my favorites of the season so far, and I'm definitely going to give this episode, Big Little Lies, Season 2, Episode 5, Kill Me, overall in A-. So over, guys, to review this week's episode of Big Little Lies. Most guys saw this episode overall. Leave your thoughts on it. We'll see you guys in my next video, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.